They weren't just prizes, they were life-changing wins that brought sudden hope. 6 ordinary people, 6 lottery tickets, each starting with joy and dreams. But fortune can be fragile. One wrong choice can turn luck into tragedy. These are the most disturbing deaths of lottery winners. It was December 2nd, 2017, in Fresno, California. A local TV crew set up outside a corner convenience store in the evening. The reporter held a microphone while shoppers moved in and out behind them. Sarah Gomez was 29. She worked as a waitress at a roadside restaurant off Highway 99. She often picked up double shifts to help her younger brother. In late November, she won $150,000 in a state lottery. The station planned a short feature at the store where she had bought the ticket. She signed a release form and waited on the sidewalk while the crew adjusted the light. The segment covered basic questions about her win and plans. Sarah stood holding a large check, saying she would use the money for her brother's college costs. Neighbors later said she had told several people this same plan. As the camera filmed, a man in a hooded sweatshirt walked into the picture in the background. He kept his head down and moved slowly along the storefront. He looked at Sarah instead of the camera. He stopped near a newspaper stand about 15 feet away and stood there. A person watching later said he looked like he did not belong and was just staring at her. The reporter finished the interview in one take. The crew shot a few extra clips and packed their gear. The package aired during the early evening news. Producers later looked at the tape again and used a circle to point out the hooded man in the background. The station posted the segment to its website and social media page. The comments filled up with congratulations and short messages from people who said they had eaten at the restaurant where Sarah worked. Sarah returned to her apartment a few hours after the interview. It was a small complex with 2 floors, an outside staircase, and numbered doors facing a parking lot. Around 9:30 p.m., neighbors heard a loud argument near her front door. A woman screamed. A short struggle followed with a sound like something hitting the doorframe. One neighbor stepped into the walkway and saw a hooded man run down the stairs and cross the lot quickly. 2 911 calls came in seconds apart. Operators sent police and paramedics. Officers arrived to find the front door partly open and footprints on the stairs. Sarah lay on the floor in the entryway with multiple stab wounds. Her purse and keys were missing. Paramedics put pressure bandages on her wounds, gave her oxygen, and moved her to a stretcher. She was taken to the nearest hospital and was declared dead shortly after arrival. Police put tape around the stairwell and took photos of the scene. They collected a broken plastic key tag from the walkway and took a sample from a smear on the handrail. Detectives went through the complex and took statements from neighbors who had seen the man run away. They also asked for the TV station's raw footage, including the full take of the interview and any wide shots taken before and after. Investigators compared the broadcast clip with security video from the convenience store. The hooded man's shoes and jacket appeared in both. A second camera down the block showed the same figure waiting near a bus bench as the crew packed up. Detectives asked for more footage from nearby businesses along the route to Sarah's home. A clip from a pharmacy parking lot recorded a hooded man running past about an hour before the 911 calls. Tips came in after the station re-aired the interview with the circled figure. One caller gave a name and car description. Officers found the vehicle and watched it for days. When the driver returned, detectives saw a matching jacket and got a search warrant. The suspect was arrested weeks later. Police found Sarah's key tag and purse parts in his home. A pocket knife with apparent blood traces was sent to the lab. The police chief warned that routine news stories could draw dangerous attention and asked the media to protect Winner's privacy. Sarah's funeral was held the following week with co-workers, customers, and her brother attending. For viewers who watched the story, one image remained: a woman holding a giant check on a sidewalk and a man in a hood standing close enough to see, close enough to follow. It was January 4th, 2016 in Jacksonville, Florida. The holiday season had just ended, and people were getting back to normal routines. In one quiet neighborhood, a rented house stood out with music playing through open windows as people gathered for a small party. For them, it was just another night. For one woman, it was the night everything changed. Angela Ruiz was 32 years old, working as a cashier and raising 2 children by herself. In December, she had won $50,000 on a scratch-off lottery ticket, more money than she had ever held at one time. With the money, she rented a bigger house and bought new furniture. Neighbors said she seemed proud of the place but noticed the stress of work and family never went away. She kept the same habits, including smoking late at night on the porch. That evening, Angela invited friends over. They sat in the living room talking and laughing with cigarettes, candles burning on tables, and drinks spread around. No one thought much about having open flames and cigarettes in the same room. Around midnight, strange sounds broke the quiet neighborhood. A neighbor heard a popping noise like glass breaking, then saw orange light in a front window. Within minutes, flames spread inside the living room, with smoke rising and crackling wood getting louder. Another neighbor heard a woman's voice calling for her children. Inside, Angela's 2 kids were able to escape through a side window. They crawled out as smoke filled the rooms behind them. Neighbors ran toward the house, shouting and pointing as flames got higher. One friend outside saw Angela stop near the doorway before she went back inside. He told investigators later that she went back for a box. He had yelled at her not to go back. The box held documents and cash she had saved since winning the lottery. Within 2 to 3 minutes, the rooms filled with thick smoke. It became almost impossible to see. Anyone inside would have had trouble breathing. From outside, neighbors said they could no longer see past the doorway as the fire spread upward. Fire trucks arrived within minutes. Crews forced open the door despite intense heat and poor visibility. Inside, they found Angela at the bottom of the stairs, overcome by thick smoke before she could reach the door. She was carried outside on a stretcher, while crews continued fighting the fire. Paramedics gave her oxygen and rushed her to the nearest hospital. Despite their efforts, Angela was declared dead shortly after arrival from smoke inhalation and burns. In the days that followed, the community came together. Angela's funeral was held at a small church with family, neighbors, and co-workers attending. People collected donations to support the children, who now faced life without their mother. Fire investigators found the cause was a candle that had been knocked over in the living room, with cigarette butts nearby that may have made it worse. Officials reminded people to never leave candles alone and keep them away from things that could catch fire. For neighbors who had seen the orange light that night, the memory stayed clear. What began as a celebration in a newly rented home turned into chaos with smoke, fire trucks, and police tape. Angela Ruiz's story showed how quickly a small mistake could destroy everything, even after the good luck of a winning ticket. It was July 8th, 2017 in Flint, Michigan. Backyards on the block were busy with weekend sounds as relatives gathered at one small house carrying food for a simple cookout. Robert Lane, called Bobby, was 56 years old and had retired from the Postal Service after decades on the same mail route. In late 2016, he won $100,000 in the state lottery. He used the money to pay off debts, replace his roof, and take relatives out to dinner more often. Neighbors called him the lucky one because he kept his life steady. As months went by, a few relatives began asking for loans more often, bringing up his lottery win at nearly every visit. That Saturday, Bobby set out folding tables and hung lights on the fence while a cousin handled the grill. By late evening, the air was still and warm. A neighbor heard music and laughter from across the alley. Just after sunset, Bobby raised a glass and made a toast about the lottery paying for one more round, like he had done a few times since winning. Midway through the evening, the mood on the patio changed. Bobby was sitting at the picnic table with his glass in hand when he leaned forward. He put one hand on the wood table. People who saw what happened said he grabbed at his stomach like he was trying to steady himself. His face went pale very quickly. A relative at the table asked if he needed to lie down. Someone reached for a chair. He let out a low sound and dropped to one knee. A neighbor who rushed through the gate later told police that Bobby kept saying his insides were burning. The people closest to him called 911 and tried to keep him sitting up. Someone brought a wet towel from the kitchen. He started breathing hard and then slower. Within a couple of minutes, he was lying on his side on the grass. He was not able to stand. The family moved the picnic table back to give space. A cousin waved at the street to signal the ambulance. Paramedics arrived within minutes and walked straight into the yard with a monitor and medical bags. One checked his breathing, while another asked about any known health problems or allergies. They started giving him oxygen and put in an IV. They recorded his vital signs. His pulse was fast but weak. He was put onto a stretcher and moved to the ambulance while a relative rode in the front. The lights turned the yard red and white as the ambulance drove away. At the hospital, a team met the ambulance and took him to a treatment room. Staff put him on monitors, gave him fluids, and ran tests. He had survived the trip, but his condition worsened at the hospital. Despite several hours of treatment, he died later that night. A detective then arrived to begin standard questions for an unexpected death. Word of what happened moved fast on the block the next morning. A few chairs and the tent still stood in the yard. Paper plates had blown to one corner by the wind. Family came and went through the day. By midweek, an obituary posted the funeral details at a church a few miles away. Bobby's funeral was held the following week in Flint. Dozens of postal workers, neighbors, and relatives filled the seats. There was a line of people waiting to sign the guest book. The service was short. Afterward, the family received food and cards from visitors in the fellowship hall. Investigators confirmed that tests showed Bobby's drink had been mixed with antifreeze, likely in a sweet drink where the taste could be hidden. A cousin who had been asking him for money became the focus. Officers collected evidence and the cousin was arrested on suspicion of poisoning. Police warned that sudden cash can change how people around a winner act, and told residents to be careful about food and drinks during gatherings. On the block where the cookout took place, neighbors went back to weekend chores. The only sign of that Saturday night was a small patch of flattened grass where the picnic table had stood. Bobby Lane's win was still a topic on the street, but it was no longer a happy one. It was June 3rd, 2017 in Macon, Georgia. The neighborhood was quiet on that Saturday evening with families on porches and kids riding bikes. On one corner lot stood a small home with boxes stacked near the windows as relatives and friends prepared to help with upcoming repairs. The house belonged to Sheila Grant, a 43-year-old school secretary who had worked at the same elementary school for nearly 20 years. A year earlier, she won $3 million in the state lottery, choosing yearly payments of about $120,000 after taxes. She planned to use most of it for her 2 grown children and grandchildren. Sheila did not live in a fancy way. She kept her small car and continued working part-time at the school. She stayed in the same house she had lived in for years. With her winnings, she was saving for a repair project that would update her kitchen and replace the old siding on the house. Friends said she stayed modest, but people around her noticed she had become more of a target for requests, especially from relatives who wanted loans. Sheila had been in an on and off relationship with Marcus Hill, a 45-year-old man she had known for years. Neighbors said they heard arguments between the two. Sheila's relatives said she had recently talked about ending things for good. Despite the tension, Marcus still visited her house often. He said he was helping with moving furniture and packing for the repairs. On June 3rd, Marcus's truck was seen parked outside Sheila's home late in the afternoon. A neighbor remembered seeing him carrying boxes inside earlier that day. Nothing seemed unusual. By early evening, Sheila's relatives began arriving to help with packing. Around 7:30 p.m., they knocked on the front door, but it was locked. They could hear shouting inside between Sheila and Marcus. One relative later told police they banged on the door and called her name, but he would not let them in. Moments later, neighbors saw Marcus rush out the front door. His shirt was stained with blood and he ran to his truck. One man across the street said he looked panicked, like he was trying to get out fast. He slammed the driver's side door and drove off quickly down the street. Sheila's relatives forced their way into the home. In the living room, they found her on the floor with multiple stab wounds. One relative immediately called 911, asking for paramedics. Another ran to a neighbor's house for help. Police operators received several frantic calls within minutes, reporting both the stabbing and Marcus's escape. Officers and paramedics arrived quickly. Inside, they confirmed Sheila had no pulse. She was declared dead at the scene. Bloodstains marked the living room floor. The knife used in the attack was found thrown away near an overturned box. Meanwhile, deputies spotted Marcus's truck speeding away from the area. A short chase followed through nearby roads until he lost control and crashed into a ditch. Officers pulled him from the vehicle and placed him under arrest. He was taken into custody without further problems. The next morning, news of Sheila's death spread through Macon. Her funeral was held later that week with co-workers, neighbors, and relatives filling the small church. Her children spoke briefly about how she had worked her whole life and only recently had financial security. Investigators confirmed that Marcus had stabbed Sheila during an argument. Detectives said financial stress and relationship problems likely played a role, with relatives reporting ongoing disputes about her winnings. The house remained empty for months with boarded windows. Sheila Grant's story became another warning that even in one's own home, the fortune of a lottery ticket can end in violence. It was September 17, 2018, in Newark, New Jersey. Evening came over a row of attached homes with brick fronts. In one row house near the corner, neighbors knew the place had been under repair for months. The home belonged to Elaine Matthews, a 61-year-old retired librarian. In February, she won $200,000 in the state lottery. She did not want attention and told only a few relatives. She used the money to update her house and sometimes bought meals for neighbors. But she did not show off or talk about the prize. Word still spread. Her sister often mentioned the win at church and on the block, saying Elaine was lucky now and could fix her house and help family. That talk reached beyond close friends. A barber heard it from a customer. A store clerk heard it twice in one afternoon. Two men near the corner store learned that the librarian on the block had cash at home. On the night of September 17th, Elaine was at home when a neighbor saw two hooded men stop near her gate. The men rushed up the steps. The neighbor heard wood crack as the front door was pushed inward and called 911. Inside, the intruders shouted for money. A witness in the next house later told police she heard a woman say to, "Please just take it." The hall was narrow, and the staircase went up along the wall. During the struggle near the top of the stairs, Elaine was pushed and fell the full flight down. She hit the lower landing. A heavy sound shook the wall next door. The men searched through the front room, pulled open drawers, and took two bags. One had household cash and receipts. Another had small electronics. The neighbor on the porch watched the men run from the house and cross the street. He said they wore dark hooded clothes and gloves. He also noticed one man carrying a bag with a paint spot on the side. This detail later matched a bag missing from Elaine's hallway. He told the 911 operator which direction they ran and gave descriptions by height and clothing. Paramedics and police arrived within minutes. Officers cleared the first floor and called up the staircase to check for other people. The medics found Elaine at the bottom of the stairs, lying face down with no movement. They turned her carefully and checked for a pulse and breathing. They put a neck collar on her. She had a deep head wound and signs of head injury. Medics gave her oxygen, stopped the bleeding, and moved her to a stretcher. She was put into the ambulance and taken to the nearest trauma hospital. At the hospital, a team met the ambulance at the entrance. She was taken to a treatment room for scans and evaluation. Despite efforts, her condition did not get better. Elaine was declared dead later that night. The medical report said blunt force head injuries from a fall downstairs during an assault. Police put tape around the front of the row house and began asking questions. Investigators took photos of the broken door frame, took fingerprints from a light switch, and collected a broken screw from the door lock area. Detectives got camera footage from a store and a bus stop at the corner. A video clip showed two hooded figures running away just after the time of the 911 call. Another clip caught part of a face when one man lowered his hood near a streetlight. News of the break-in moved fast on the block. Her funeral was held at a small church in Newark a few days later. Detectives made progress within weeks. A patrol officer stopped a man carrying a bag that matched the neighbor's description. Fingerprints matched a known criminal. One suspect was arrested while police searched for the second. Detectives confirmed the men had learned of Elaine's winnings through talk at a nearby corner store. Police warned residents to be careful about discussing sudden money. For the people on that street, the memory stayed clear. The sound of a door breaking, two men running into the dark, and a quiet house with tape across the steps. Elaine Matthews kept her win private. The talk that spread was not hers. It was enough for two strangers to choose her home and a fall down a narrow staircase to decide the rest. It was May 12, 2015 in Dayton, Ohio. The streets were empty after dark with only a few cars on the main road. At a corner gas station, the lights were on and pumps were bright against the night. For most people, this was just another evening trip, but for one man, it would be his last time there. Kenneth Harris, called Ken, was 49 years old and worked night shifts at a plastics factory. He was reliable and steady, almost never missing work. In March, Ken won $250,000 from a lottery ticket. He used the money to pay bills, buy a used truck, and help his sister with her house. People noticed he seemed happier but was not careful about his good luck, carrying more cash and showing off his new truck at places like the gas station he visited often. That night, just before 9:40 p.m., Ken drove into the parking lot. The security cameras recorded him getting out of his truck and walking inside the store. The station was busy. A few cars were parked near the gas pumps. One customer stood inside by the food shelves. Ken went to the counter. He talked with the worker while he paid for beer and some tickets. The man by the food shelves looked at him several times. Then that man walked toward the door. Another man followed close behind him. The cameras showed they seemed to wait until Ken was finished. Then they went out the door after him. Outside, the parking lot had lights but also had dark areas near the edges. Ken walked back toward his truck. People who saw what happened later told police they saw two men come close to Ken as he reached for his keys. One man told Ken to give him his wallet. A customer at gas pump 3 heard Ken say he had worked for his money before he tried to push past the men. During the fight, one of the men took out a pocket knife. Ken got stabbed in the chest. The knife went in deep, hitting close to his heart. He fell back against his truck, blood getting on the door, then dropped to the ground. The whole thing happened very quickly. Both men who attacked him ran toward the street. One of them dropped a glove as they ran away into the dark. Inside the gas station, things became confused and busy. The worker who had been watching through the window turned off the gas pumps right away and called 911. Several customers ran to help Ken. One person took off his jacket and pressed it against the wound. Another person gave directions to the emergency operator. They could see Ken was bleeding heavily. Ken could not speak clearly. Police officers came within 4 minutes. One officer put a special bandage on Ken's chest wound, while another moved people away so paramedics could help. They gave Ken oxygen, put needles in his arm, and rushed him to the ambulance. While driving to the hospital, Ken's blood pressure dropped and his breathing became weak. The wound had caused internal bleeding, likely damaging his heart or major blood vessels. By the time they reached the hospital, his heart had stopped. Doctors attempted resuscitation, but the damage was too severe. He was pronounced dead before 10:45 p.m. News of the killing spread fast in Dayton. At Ken's funeral, co-workers and family gathered, with many saying the prize money was never really enjoyed. His sister thanked people for their support. Police reviewed security videos and confirmed the attackers had followed Ken outside. Within weeks, 2 suspects with prior robbery records were arrested. Police warned that sudden wealth often brings the wrong kind of attention and told winners not to show cash in public. Ken Harris's story showed how quickly good luck could change. What started as a normal stop for beer and tickets ended with his death at a neighborhood gas station.